Now, all forms of imaging in general follow the same basic principle. And I will take photography just as an example. Typically, the idea in imaging is that you have some kind of source that emits a form of energy, in the case of photography, photons from the sun. Then you have an object that receives the energy, and as it receives it, it manipulates it, it changes it, and maybe it reflects it back. And it reflects it back towards something that can absorb it. For example, a camera. So in the case of photography, light from the sun hits an object, perhaps the t-shirt that you're wearing right now. And because the t-shirt you're wearing has some kind of color, what will happen is that your t-shirt will absorb certain frequencies related to the color of your t-shirt and will reflect other frequencies. And so you will emit a modified, the energy that you receive gets modified by what it reflects on, and then gets sent to the receiver, the camera. And that's how you take a picture. Now, all forms of imaging work on this basic principle. For example, X-rays are very similar. There's a source which emits X-rays. X-rays pass through the human body, and as they pass through tissues of different density, the X-ray gets weakened more or less. And then it hits a receiver, a plate, that then generates those images that you're used to seeing. So again, there's a source that emits an energy. The energy gets modified by some kind of body. And then there's a receiver that receives the modified energy. Now, MRI is really no different. The slight exception is that in the case of conventional MRI, what emits the energy and what receives it at the end is the same device. It's known as a radiofrequency coil right here. But we will discuss how this works a little later on. So the idea in MRI, just like all other forms of imaging, is that the radiofrequency coil emits an energy. The energy enters the human body. We will see that it's really about hydrogen protons inside your body, inside water molecules. These hydrogen protons absorb the energy and then re-emit it, slightly changed. What is interesting, and this is the whole basis of how MRI works, is that sometimes the energy that is emitted is strong. Other times, the energy that is emitted is less strong. For example, in this case, there's a strong energy emitted. In this other case, the energy reflected from the protons is weakened. It turns out that one of the things that makes the difference between a strong and a weak signal is whether you're using a certain part of the brain, is neural activity. So this already gives you a preview of how MRI works to study the human brain. Because when neurons are comparatively active, it will cause, through some biological processes which we will discuss, the signal to become a little stronger. And when neurons are comparatively less active, it will cause the MR signal that is reflected to be a little weaker. And so you can leverage this to look at what parts of the brain are particularly interested in a mental activity. But we'll get to this a little later on.